Welcome to the Find Your Flow podcast. Well, welcome to the studio with me, Melissa Monte. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Let's start there.
You are. My last name is made up by my dad. The rest of my family has Montalvo. So yeah, it's not Monte or anything.
We don't have to get fancy with it. That's like me. It's Roche. It's Roche. It's very simple. It's not Rocher. But I don't mind it if you want to fancify it. So I normally jump in with my one and only question, but let's just hold off on that for one little nanosecond, because before we hit record, we were discussing how the world just seems a little bit crazy right now. Time is a bizarre construct that I've decided to give up on, and I'm trying to honor the sun cycle as opposed to time, right? And show up when I promised that I would show up.
Yes.
But things seem a little bit bonkers, and everybody that I'm talking with and getting to meet and I'm listening and learning from, everybody seems to be saying the same thing, which is we really are creating and splitting these new timelines and getting to choose who we are, where we are, what we're creating in every single moment. So you being here, it couldn't be more divinely timing. I happened to have a cancellation today so that I was able to squeeze you in. Otherwise, I've actually started a wait list, and it's several months long, even into 2026. So I'm really, really grateful that you could be here. I'm appreciative for you to be here. And listener, just in case you don't know, Melissa here is the host of Mind Love. She is also a study of neuroscience, psychology, and ancient wisdom. And if you've been with me for any amount of time, you're well aware that I'm a nerd, that I absolutely love every single one of those subjects, and I can't wait to bring it all together. Welcome, Melissa, to Find Your Flow.
Thank you so much for having me. I love when things just kind of work out exactly how they're supposed to.
Yes. So, what's your input? What's your take right now? Before I even ask you my burning question, which is what does Find Your Flow mean to you? And I have a feeling that will come into the answer of the question I am going to ask you, which is first, I hope you don't mind my cursing. And if you do, just let me know. But my real question is, what the fuck? And what is happening?
See this on so many layers. For, probably 2020 to 2023 especially, I was really interested in, what the fuck was going on in the world? Like, everything seemed crazy. The side I thought I was on seemed crazier than I was willing to go. I had to move teams over here. I was like, I still believe all the things I believed. Why did I get shoved to the center? And then, I got
I'm right there with you.
It got really dark for a while though, because the more I looked at the evidence, it just was dark. Mind you, I was bringing a baby into the world at that time, and twice, 2020 and 2023. And it was just really, really difficult. I eventually had to step out of that and focus on what was going on internally and how all of these external events could just warp my internal state. And what I found was, as I stepped back and, I thought I was being smart. I wasn't watching the mainstream news cycles, but some of those non-mainstream cycles are even darker. And so I was just kind of in this spot of, I cannot look at this anymore if I want the best for my baby that I'm growing, my family, my mental health. I remember feeling like I was going to have a breakdown at one point and interviewing Ariel Garten of the Muse headband. And she ended up being like, I'm going to send you this headband. Maybe it'll revive your meditation right now. It did. I ended up doing transcendental meditation. But what I found was that the way that I saw the world was a direct reflection of my internal state. And this is something that I've always known, not always, but known for at least a decade. But it's just interesting how when something feels just tangible enough, it can take you right out of that. Yeah, that's the case in most of the time. But right now, clearly everyone's going through this, whatever it is. And so with this phase, it seems a little different. It feels like people are kind of getting their bearings. Some things are shifting back into place, like kind of coming back from the far extreme sides that they've been penduluming to. I know that's not a word, but for myself, I keep having to remind myself that I'm choosing a lot of this. I decided to write a book this year. I'm working with an agent. I'm launching a new program. I still have my other stuff. I'm growing my audience because of the book. And so there's all these really big, awesome things happening. And I've had to sort of dial back a little bit because I've overcommitted. But then I'm watching my husband and he's going through very similar things and some of the things he didn't choose, like very external, stressful events. And almost everybody I know is going through that same thing. And so I can't help but wonder if this is all just our own personal manifestations of a squeeze that we're all supposed to go through at the same time, so that there's this great emergence. We all sort of ascend or elevate at the same time through our own personal hardships or struggles or just stresses that we've chosen or don't think we've chosen, but maybe have on some level. And so that's my theory of what's happening right now.
I'm right there with you. And I see it the exact same way that you do. I love that you have little ones, little tiny ones. Mine are older. I have 25 and 22. He'll be 22 in a couple of weeks. Putting these young adults out into the world, right? Stripped away of any kind of shelter that I can offer them. And in complete trust that, fuck, I hope I did it right. I hope we did something right. Allowing for them to think independently, to discern for themselves. And that squeeze that you're talking about, very much like labor, right? I mean, we really do have to squeeze in order to birth. And that's exactly what it feels like right now. This birthing of something brand spanking new programs, new ideas, new thoughts, very independent, which in my brain is why we're seeing that swing of the pendulum. It's just from one extreme to the other and then whipshaw right back again. It's like it's between two boulders and it's seriously hitting off of both of them. And when's it going to slow down? And I do believe that we're in this period of time where we get to choose, which is kind of beautiful. What are we choosing? What are we creating through our choices? Makes everything, which is why I think time for me personally has like ceased to exist, because I'm slowing down to the point where I can feel my way through as opposed to hear my way through or see my way through or scream my way through. Like I'm not forcing anything anymore. I'm literally just feeling, okay, what works for me? And then what feels right for me gets projected and explained to my family. This is where I am. This is what I'm feeling. What are you feeling? And then, of course, in relationship, we compromise and figure out our flow and our plan and our journey together. It's all such a very interesting time to be here, which, okay, so that leads me to Melissa, what does find your flow mean to you if we're in this redefining moment?
I think it always comes back to just the present moment. Even right now, so I found out I was pregnant again a couple of weeks ago, and so the nausea's just kicking in, and I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't remember how hard this was before. Like I'm just remembering now, and I have so long to go. So this has happened with all my pregnancies, where in the beginning, I'm like, how am I going to get through months of this?
Right?
But I was sitting in meditation the other day, and I was just trying to move that feeling and detach the meaning. And I started to realize that so much of my suffering is because I'm piling on the accumulation of all of the months that I'm
Absolutely.
pushing to be pain into this moment. And so it's not just my nausea is not awful. I'm not throwing up right now. It's just enough. I don't know, even mild
It's that
headaches,
hint,
mild nausea. It's like, it
that
feels debilitating.
undercurrent.
Like standing is not fun. And so I was sitting there and I was moving it and I realized I could dissipate it if I just focused on this moment. And it's not comfortable, but it's not unbearable. And so I keep reminding myself of that. And then, of course, right after that, our family's hit with a sickness. We're all like laid up. I had like night sweats. I'm just like, it's just this moment. And yeah, it's
God,
combined
thank you
with the
for being
nausea.
here.
Yeah, there's just a bunch of stuff. I'm feeling better now, but yeah, there's just a lot of things. And so much of our suffering around it, though, is what does this mean? And even while we were talking about like everything that's happened in the last few years and just how crazy things have gotten, how a lot of people have really shifted their worldviews. I just posted a meme like, I miss the way the world looked before I knew too much about it. And
Ignorance is bliss,
I
isn't it?
feel that, yes, I think we think maybe we can't be vigilant against the things, but yeah. And so I think that's what find your flow means to me is just when you can come back to the present moment, you can hear yourself and not everything else. The meaning you've been told to give this moment, the meaning that your patterns want to give this moment. It's just, what is this moment? What can I do in this moment? Where am I being guided in this moment? And I mentioned how I have so many things going on. I've committed myself more than I ever have in my life. And I've used the word overcommitted, but I'm actually dialing that back because these are all things that I want in my life. And I have a deadline now. I need to get a bunch of them done in 9 months. And so I wonder though, with even everything, I know seeing a lot of people's response to the last 5 years, and people are all over the board and their points are valid, whether they're on the left or the right, I believe. And if you can look at them really objectively, but are you really suffering? Like, if you didn't know any of this, if you didn't have
Right?
media, would you be suffering? What's really different other than egg prices? And can you be honest about that? Because you'll see a bunch of people project, well, then this has happened. I'm noticing people reacting to me this way. Are they really, or are you projecting? And I'm not saying
Ooh,
that to offend anybody, but just as a really honest question to ask yourself to get your power back. Because if you really believe that everyone is worse and everyone is offending you, you're going to feel that. That's just what your reality is going to be. But if you can step back and just get a little curious about where this is coming from, you may see things a different way. Just an invitation.
wholeheartedly agree with you. And I would take it even to the point of you've surrendered your peace over to these others. And by that, I mean people, experiences, places, all of the other. You've surrendered your peace. You've given it over to these things that you say are aggravating, frustrating, annoying. So you've literally handed your peace over to something negative. You gave it away. So the whole point of this podcast is, how do you get that back? When you wake up one day and you realize, well, shit, this is not how I want to be living my life. How do you start reining it all back in and seeing things differently so that you get to create, manifest, project everything that you want to experience? Because then, talk about neurology, psychology, you've literally changed the filter through which you view the world. And if you bring it all home and you figure out how, I think, you gave your piece away, why you gave your piece away, then you get to take it back and say, now this is what I'm going to create. And I get to come to this buffet of healing and start to really pick and choose what works for me, put things back when they don't work for you, but you lose that judgment, which I love that you said, I'm not trying to offend anybody, just saying this from a place of non-judgment, which I think is just absolutely beautiful. And just real quick, pause. Congratulations.
Which thing?
Congratulations on your newest, latest and
Thank you.
greatest
Thank you.
creation. That's so wonderful. That's so beautiful. And um I remember so many years ago being pregnant. I have this, I've been through so many experiences in my life But when I was really, really, really nauseous, and I was one of those people, I threw up all day, every day for months and months and
Me
months.
too.
And what I would tell myself is, oh, the sicker I am, the healthier the pregnancy.
Yes.
Because that
Yes.
means you're producing more hormones. Your body is accepting these hormones. It's trying to figure out what to do with them. And it's creating this little body that's inside of you. So I used to tell myself, if you find this to be helpful, I used to tell myself while I was, over a toilet, over a pot, literally on the T in Boston, like into Ziploc baggies to throw it away. I would tell myself, oh, this is a very healthy pregnancy. This is
Yeah.
very viable. This is very strong. Everything is happening the way it should be happening. And then when I found out I was having a girl, she is going to be very strong. She is very strong. She's developing beautifully. Everything is perfect. Same thing with my son. And it sort of made it a little bit worth it. It made it bearable.
Yes. Yeah. With my first, I had a like minor hemorrhage and I started bleeding and I was
Mm.
terrified because this was my first pregnancy. I didn't know a lot and I had to go to the ER, and it was actually a horrible experience where as the first ER doctor told me I was waiting to miscarry. And then I basically went back. I was in Michigan at the time visiting my husband's family, and I was just like laying in the grass feeling super nauseous and like Googling things, and that became my mantra. I was like, okay, well, the nausea's here, it's a good thing. By the time I talked to an OB, she's like, I don't know what that doctor was talking about. He told me the placenta had detached. She's like, the placenta's not even developed yet. Like, this doctor knew nothing. And you are not waiting to miscarriage. This is very common. It happens in a third. And so, yes, it is helpful. And after I had 2 miscarriages last year, which I had never, for some reason, I thought it was something that happened to other people. So
I
now
remember that. Yes, I
this
remember thinking
nausea
that.
is a little bit easier to deal with just because this pregnancy just kind of happened. We weren't trying. We thought we were trying not to, not the 100% method, but and I was like, oh, well, I guess this is happening. And so it was one of those things I was having a hard time choosing to do again, but I knew I wanted to. And so it feels like this was given to me. And so we are putting all the good into the world right now.
Absolutely. Oh my God. I remember I had a miscarriage before each pregnancy. I had a loss and a miscarriage before our first, and then a miscarriage before our second. And I feel you, sister. I do. And the fear of trying again is very, very real. And the doctors are like, okay, yeah, you can try again. And you're like, yeah, ooh, that was a lot. That was a lot to go through. So I'm not so sure. So this little gift, this little bundle, yay! We're
Yay.
sending all the love, all the light. Heck, you tell me if you want Reiki, because I will never intrude. But if you
Yeah.
want Reiki, it's yours. I'll leave it as a package in front of your soul, and you can open it whenever you feel like it.
I take any gifts that are sent my way.
Then you've got it. So tell me how did all of this come about? Mind love. Talk to me about what is mind love, which it's fabulous title. And your programs, and I am listen. I read, and I'm bringing up my notes here. I read one question and I was like, I'm in. She needs to be a guest. Done. Why Genesis isn't history, but your personal awakening blueprint. Could we maybe spend the next 3 days just powwowing? We'll stop for potty breaks and food, but can we please talk about that?
Yes, there's a lot to unpack in these questions. First, mind love was my realization that, and it has unfolded over the years. It began with just the understanding that your brain has a negativity bias. And if you do nothing, it's going downhill. So at the very minimum, you need to give it love to even keep it at its baseline. But you can also create from there. You can go on an upward trajectory. And I learned this through a very long story of disappearing in pieces, struggling with sexual assault, my dad dying, a good friend dying by suicide, and I just lost myself. I did not know how to deal with this. And I toxic positivity it. I just decided it wasn't going to affect me. I had had little seeds of understanding of self-development, not a lot, with surface level understanding of like mind over matter. So I just said this wasn't going to affect me. And I just kept going on with my life. What I didn't realize is that those unaddressed
Mm.
beliefs that I had gained through this were damaging me. They were manifesting in ways outside of my control because I wasn't addressing them, because I was storing so many emotions in my body. I ended up in a really horrible relationship with a manipulator who cheated on me, lied to me, and it culminated into realizing he had a secret burglary ring and me getting a felony for his crimes to save him from jail time. And so by age 22, I felt like my life was over. And the rest of the story is really my coming out of that dark pit of despair and trying to rebuild my life, trying to find the success that I thought that I had always expected for myself. I always felt smart. I was highly intelligent. I was AP student, Dean's List, all of that. And I was unwilling to get a minimum wage job. Again, not to be offensive, but that's just not what I saw for myself. And so I thought, how do I find that kind of success with no one else's permission? And so I started teaching myself internet marketing. And I ended up winning a contest that year to tickets to Traffic and Conversion Summit, winning a contest there, the Wicked Smart competition. It set up my freelance career. And so when I look at that situation, this time that could be described as like the worst period of my life, someone who nearly ruined my life, ironically, or not so ironically, maybe just divinely, that was my slingshot toward my purpose. If that had not happened, I may have taken the golden handcuffs of a job and been comfortable but not fully fulfilled and not really had this reason to follow my purpose. And entrepreneurship is really hard. People put one foot in and one foot out all the time, which is why
Mhm.
there's such a huge failure rate. I don't think it's actually starting a business that's a huge failure rate. It's that people don't go all in quite often. And it's difficult to do that. But I had to, because it felt like all the other doors were closed.
Right.
And so this, now when I see the idea of mind love, I look more so as my understanding has evolved. I used to just, well, I think people miss the point that you can't just start tuning into yourself all willy-nilly. If your patterns and your beliefs are, you need to purify them. You need to
Yes.
understand what your baseline is, what your algorithm is, as I call it. What were you born into? What beliefs have you picked up along the way? What does your culture and society say? Like this is where you're starting. And so there's sort of a hero's journey path that I follow, helping people to understand their stories and how to see the wisdom from it. But that brings us to Genesis, which is another weird obsession that I've had my whole life. I grew up in a Christian environment and it never really felt right to me. I had a lot of questions. I couldn't understand why God was supposed to be the voice of morality but didn't follow his own rules and was responsible for millions of murders, literally just telling somebody to kill their own children because they're upset by a minor decision. Oh, you worked on the Sabbath. Let's have the whole town stone him to death. Made no sense to me. I have no idea how billions of people don't have like this sense of friction when they're like looking at their beliefs, how they can just say. But there was something that always called me back to it. Like, what is this then? Why
It's
is this here?
fascinating. It's fascinating.
And it merged a bunch of understandings that I have in studying marketing for all of those years and realizing people do not change behavior through features or facts. It's the story. And every good marketer knows that. And how did I change my life was understanding the story that I was telling myself. And one day something clicked when I was reading actually Yogananda's, Paramahamsa Yogananda's The Second Coming of Christ. It's his revelatory commentary on the original teachings of Jesus. So he goes through the New Testament. And he was talking about how in the beginning is the Word and how we've misunderstood that. Christianity just says Word means Jesus. Where does that say that? Why does suddenly we're calling Jesus Word? I don't know. But what does word mean? It's intelligent vibration plus meaning. And so all of this was coming together, and I started to look at the Bible through a new lens, bringing us to Genesis. A Course in Miracles really helped me with this understanding of Genesis. But when you look at Genesis, we're supposed to just take for fact that a snake talks now, and there's different understandings of why Satan coming into the snake's body. The Bible never actually says that the snake is evil. They say he's cunning. And when you look at it, Eden represents this unconscious unity. It's when life feels figured out, but you're cruising along. It's the same as the algorithm that I just talked about. And then the serpent brings this activation energy. This is where you're really questioning assumptions. Are those limits real? Because all he says is, did he really tell you to only not eat from this tree? He doesn't actually say to do it. It's just a question that gets you to sort of separate from that. And that's A Course in Miracles talks about that too, the tiny mad idea. Could we be separate from God? And the apple activates the choice points and it starts to develop discernment. The fall creates the vibrational drop into matter consciousness for experience. This is where we're told that it was a punishment, where suddenly now childbirth will be hard and you have to work for your food. But aren't also those just the characteristics of choosing to become human, choosing to evolve into this lifetime? Mm-hmm. The hiding represents your first spiritual bypass when you can't really handle this new awareness, like, whoa, this is a lot. And then the consequences teach you the rules of duality, all of those parts of being human. It's not punishment. This is the curriculum. And then the exile represents that conscious partnership with the divine and your graduation into co-creation. And so when you look at it through that, to me, everything makes so much sense. And so many Bible stories can be discerned down to this underlying meaning, what I call consciousness technology, that if you open yourself to it, you can feel the story and you start to be pulled into that transformation also to continue on your own.
That is the maybe most beautiful explanation of the Old Testament that I've ever heard. And one that resonates so very deeply because I'm a person, I grew up Catholic. I went to a Catholic high school. I went to a Catholic college. I had nuns beat my hands and kick me out of classrooms just for asking questions. And I, as someone who in my youth raged against the machine being the Catholic Church, I never understood why everyone seemed to be okay with being told you are innately bad, you are simultaneously made in the image of God. And I don't care if you use the word God. You could say light, love, hope, universe, but you're made in the image of this greatness. But you're the bad one. You're the not so, can't do anything good. Everything you're going to do is going to be bad. You're going to have to learn through pain. And you know what? And then you're pretty shitty. So you're going to do it all over again. And you're just going to keep running this same Sisyphean program up the hill, down the hill, up the hill, down the hill with this fucking boulder, right? Like, I don't understand it. And I've always been the one to say, can we please just maybe get into the New Testament? Can we please just maybe get into the Jesus is a reflection of us? Hey, how about that? How about this is an example of how divine you are? Oops, sorry, we wrote this book to tell you that you were in the reflection of God and you can't do anything good. Now we're going to make it all right and tell you, really, look, a human can be good, and that's you. But the damage has been done.
Yeah.
The damage has been done and used for centuries upon centuries as a control mechanism for behavior. Like, that's the other thing.
Well, there's a lot of people don't realize that original sin didn't exist as a concept until 3 centuries after Jesus died. And when the Roman Empire took over, they needed to add legitimacy to their reign. And they often did things like that with a unifying religion. And so they took things from paganism and they rewrote the Bible in many ways, retranslated. At that time, there was sort of a mass printing of Bibles, all by scribes who were not official scribes because they couldn't afford it. So there are people within the church with those biases. They killed all of the original Christians that followed Jesus's actual teachings,
Yes.
and they kept and formed the ones that created the manipulation. And how beautiful it
Yes.
is for those in control to have people believe that they were born flawed and they can't trust themselves. Because then guess what? That leads to generations upon generations of people who can read clear inconsistencies in a God they're supposed to worship and just say, oh, well, I can't trust myself. God must work in mysterious ways. Well, I don't think murder is the same as mysterious ways. Like, it seems pretty cut and dry here. Yeah, everything has been warped, and people don't question as much as we do. Many,
Which
many people.
again brings us back to the very beginning conversation that we were having, which is I really do believe this mass awakening, and I guess to use those words sort of makes it cliche, right? But for lack of vocabulary, this literal awakening, this aha moment of, I think maybe we've been doing it wrong. I think maybe I'm not so bad. And maybe if I can get past the whole judgment of everyone coming at me telling me that I'm doing everything wrong, maybe if I focus on what is right for me and not what's right for me means you are wrong, right? So you have to do what I say you have to do because it's right for me. We're waking up out of that. And to your point, like those blinders come off and you go, wait a second. Like all extremes are bad. All extremes are just self-serving. All extremes cherry pick the information that they hear, see, take in, contemplate, though I don't believe there's much contemplation happening. Otherwise, you would come to the point of going, oh, wait a second. I just don't think we should maybe, I don't know, kill people for no reason. But to each his own, right? It's a little bit bonkers to me. But instead of sitting in judgment, right? I sit back and I from this different perspective go, it's interesting. I really do find the times that we're living in right now, as daunting as they may be, I find them to be interesting because just when you think like it can't get any louder, it does. Like somebody turns the volume up and goes, you thought it stopped at 11? How's 20? Right? And they really crank it and you go, oh, I'm really seeing the contrast. And humans, like you said, humans with our brains, by nature, we learn through contrast. We learn through pain very, very, very quickly, as I'm sure with your little ones, right? That's hot. Well, what's the fastest way a kid is going to learn that something's hot? They're going to touch something hot and go, and they're going to scream, they're going to cry, and you're going to go, and that's why we don't touch the stove. Right? This is why we don't do these things. You could have listened to me. You could have, right? But kudos on you for not trusting me and going through with it anyway. Now, will you trust me to help you to feel better? But I feel like that's where we are right now, is everybody is cranking the heat up to learn what is hot so that they can back off and say, okay, how do we calm things down? Not how do we just go back and ignore the fact that things are hot?
And it's interesting to look at exactly what's going on right now, because I have noticed that it seems like what many people are struggling with society is what other people are doing. Like, I can't believe they still believe that. I can't believe they haven't woken up to that. I can't believe these people think they're awake when they're not, like, all. But it comes back to what we were just talking about with children. Some of us have learned that you have to let them learn. It's difficult. It's harder said than done. I like to stream the Global Center of Christ Consciousness on Sundays. It's in Sedona. Great church service, by the way, if you want something a little more open-minded. And he was talking about how with children, it's like with their spiritual paths, it's like, you want to make sure, like, hey, I've done all the research for you. Please don't end up where I started. Like, I've already figured out it was wrong.
God, right?
But how it's inappropriate to do that because we don't know what they necessarily need to learn. And when we look at that, like even now, I was telling my husband like last week, I was like, I'm so overcommitted. I had like a week where I was visiting my grandma, coming back. I had like 9 calls in a day. And I was like, but I think I've always thought, yeah, that's overcommitting for other people, but I just can output more than most people. It's fine. I was like, well, now I have learned on an experiential level. I've I've known this stuff for decades, but I've learned on an experiential level and I will never do this again. And so we sit here and it reminds me of how I got into the situation with my horrible ex. His dad died the weekend I met him. My dad had died a couple years before. I
Mm,
became obsessed with loving him the way I didn't feel loved and understood when I was going through my own downward spiral, which meant I ignored all the red flags. I didn't even just ignore them. I was collecting them like they completed some sort of a set. And I was just bringing them with me.
yeah.
And I was looking at it through one lens that I need to save this person. He's going through a lot. And so when I found out about the alcoholism and the gambling and then the meth eventually, I just kept cushioning his rock bottom, not realizing that I was the one, I was going down with him and I was the one with all the bruises because I was the cushion. And so we do that. We can look at that on so many macro and micro levels of, yeah, that person might have the opposite beliefs as me. But is it that they're dumb or is it that they need to learn a different lesson than I'm ready for right now? And
That's
am I
genius.
in my ego so much that I think that I'm so right that like they'll end up exactly where I am? Or are there multiple places to end up as well? And do we need the balance of a lot of things just because, I mean, what do I believe this existence is? I believe it's God splitting into every version of consciousness to experience the full capacity of all. And so if everyone was my path and my views, that leaves out everything but me.
Right?
And so that is needed just for the experience. Like, does it need to be more? Does it need to have the meaning that I think it should? It doesn't. It can be perfect just because it is.
Yes. I love that you just said you believed you had to save him. Oh, are there any more powerful words? I don't think so. When you go around saying, thinking and believing, I could save you, I could change your life, I could do this, I could do that. And that parent child relationship, right? I could save you from a lot of pain if you could just do X, Y, and Z. And I see this with mine, 25 and 22. There was this point through their maturity, around the age of 2, I started listening more. You know, it's funny when they're newborns, they really do have different cries. And the parent typically can pick up on a cry very easily and go, oh, it's time to feed. It's time to change, right? It's time to sleep. And I remember looking at both of my babies when they were born and saying, I'm going to learn a lot from you. You're going to teach me more than I could ever parent into you. So I release the parenting into you and instead embrace the learning from you. And together we're going to create something nobody's ever seen before. Because I did not want to recreate my childhood. I wanted to take the good, all of the lessons, even through negative experience, all of the lessons I considered were good, bring those forward into my parenting. And so I look at them as young adults and that's when I think, okay, like we got to really hope and pray that we chose to do it right as best we could, because now they're fully fledged independent, and maybe just maybe they turn around and say, I don't know about this and you have some experience, could you share your experience with me? Not, how do I do this? I'm going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to save you from all of the trips, the falls and pitfalls that I've experienced in my life, right?
Yeah. And
Could we look at each other like that?
I was just interviewing Terry Cole and she said, "This will change your life." She said, "Next time somebody asks you for advice, the biggest gift you can give to them is actually to stop and say, I actually have some ideas for you, but first, what's your gut telling you? What do you
Yes.
think you should do?" And you train people to go back to themselves. And I did something similar. I started doing this a couple years ago with my oldest, inspired by one of my friends. For so often, I mean, he's just like a wild one. He's constantly building forts. He'll take my bed if it, like, I
I
don't even know
love that.
how he gets the strength sometimes. And I'm just looking like, you're destroying my house. I just cleaned it up, but this is taking some time. So maybe it's okay. But then I got to clean. Well, no, but that one's too messy. I don't know. And so, or that he's going to like knock over the bookshelf with this. And so I started instead saying, let's pause for a second. What's your plan here? Are you thinking about this? And so I'm steering him to kind of critically think more without giving him the answers. Well, what are you going to do about that it's that close to the bookshelf? And if it falls over, it's going to knock the whole thing down. Have you thought about that? And so it's just a different way of engaging. And I've noticed even by doing this, it gets his wheels working. He feels trusted because I'm asking him the questions. It gives him more self-esteem, but it also calms my nervous system through the very process. Because so often, like, I think that I'm just being a mom, but it comes back to control. Even when you try to take somebody's pain, so often we don't realize we're trying to take their pain because their pain makes us uncomfortable. But that pain is the struggle, and the struggle is the transformation. So what are you really saving them from? You might be
Right.
saving them from their biggest transformation.
You could be robbing them of,
Yes.
you know? I mean, talk about changing the language. You're not saving them from transformation, you're robbing them of that
Yeah.
experience. And oftentimes I ask myself, and who am I to do that? Who am I? What right do I have to take that autonomy away from anyone? Anyone. We raised our kids with this motto, I can't want it more than you. I can't. They would, cry and I want to do this and this isn't happening and that's not happening. And through sports, mostly the coach isn't doing X, Y, and Z. Well, coach can't want it more than you. I can't want it more than you. So what are you going to do to change the situation? What are
Oh,
you going to do to step up?
yeah.
If you want it this bad, it means it's possible. So what are you going to do now to step into that version of yourself and create that life that you want so desperately? If you can feel it, taste it, see it, imagine it, it's possible. So let's go. Let's do
Yeah.
this. What do you need to do now? Is that what happens in one of your programs when people come to work with you?
Yeah, well, I work with two types of people because story work is powerful for self-development and also for business. So half the people come into my programs because they're looking at their life and they're like, what was this all for? I know I've become
Mm,
something big, but what, like, why did this all happen? And they might have an idea, but they're really trying to figure out, like, what is their purpose? That's how I found Mind Love, was going back through my story and really understanding, like, what was I endlessly curious about? What was the meaning underneath these specifics? My story is not very relatable to people if you just look at it on the lines of taking a felony for someone else's crime, getting jail, like, and
right, like
your
bullet
biggest
points.
concern being like
Yeah.
how to purge your food in a jail cell. It does not
Like,
make sense to a lot of people. But what they do relate to is ignoring their own inner signals, giving too much to other people, losing themselves in relationships, overriding their pain, and just trying to move through it. There's a lot. And so when you find the meaning, those golden threads of meaning under your story, it
mm,
points you in a direction. And then the other people are those who are at that point and they're trying to figure out, like, now how do they move other people through their story? And there's a kind of an art and a science to that. I believe good stories, the transformational stories, the ones that pull people in with you, the ones where people email you and they're like, I feel like you're in my mind. It's because you understand how to create a resonance with somebody. And
mm.
so how do you spark the emotion and the right emotions? Because so often people tell their stories and they trauma dump. And there's a lot of my story that doesn't come out in the public version of it. horrible things that I know would make people feel something, but I can't save them by the end of it. I can't, like, you want to protect your audience too. And so where you get visceral isn't in those deepest moments of pain. Even think about a good movie. It might start out with maybe a scene from a wedding and they're super happy, and right after the wedding they're like in their honeymoon suite, and something happens and there's like a moment of tension and he like moves back, and you see this a lot in what's that movie, It Ends With Us, where
Mm.
it's like, was that an accident? Was it not? And you don't really know. But then it cuts to like 7 years later and she's like, got a bruised eye. She's watching the dishes. She's clearly afraid. He's like on the couch drinking alcohol. You don't need to know everything that happened in there. And there were probably some pretty brutal things that happened, but you can fill in the blanks with the details that you're given. Where you want to get really visceral when you're sharing a story is that moment of realization. I worked with a woman recently who was a real estate agent that just could not stand doing that anymore. And her moment that we really dug into was when she was gripping the steering wheel and she couldn't get herself to go into her job. And she was having this almost panic attack.
Mm-hmm.
And people could relate to that. Or this moment, another client, their husband said something to her, oh, you'll never leave that. And that moment hit her like a gut punch. And she's like, I have to. Like, clearly I'm not doing anything that shows that I'm going to do this. And so it's those moments, because it sparks the resonance. It sparks this, I can do that too. Maybe I'm on the verge of that realization, so that then it keeps them wanting more. And so there's a lot with story that you can work with. You can work with your story to heal, to really understand your life in a
Absolutely.
new way, to retell it through the point of the hero rather than the victim. But you can also use it to help that same transformation with other people, how to help other people see themselves as the heroes so that they're ready to make a change. So when I'm looking at life, I think it's all one big story. That's what it is. We're all projecting our beliefs in this holographic reality, creating a story that we can see and relate to. That's what it all is. And so even in the beginning, when we talked about projections, and I said, I'm not meaning that to be offensive. One of the biggest shifts that ever happened in my life was seeing projections as a gift. In the beginning of my self-development journey, I saw these projections as, oh, man, another spot I'm not healed, I'm judging this other person
Right.
again. But now I'm like, why do I keep seeing this and feeling this? What's in this for me? And that's all it is. It just means it's your next level. And if you're willing to go through that, if you're willing to go into it instead of resisting it or clinging to it, you can move through your life in this state of constant evolution as the co-creator.
That right there, because that level of curiosity, I think, changes everything. It tips the scales. It really does tip the scales. There's a certain camaraderie that happens with victimhood, right? Where it cycles around and around in celebration of the pain, in celebration of victimhood. And me personally, I find that I get very frustrated with that, and to the point of anger. And then I go, wait a second. Why? It's a tickle in my brain. Why? Martyrs used to aggravate me to that extent. And now it's that camaraderie in victimhood angers me. So right here, right now, I am in that curious state of why? Why does that anger me so much? And I pick at scabs. Like, that's what I do. I pick at it and pick at it and try to get to the root cause of things, because that's part of my healing journey. I love constantly to pull at a thread and go, why? But why? But why? But why? Because then so much opens up for me. So here I am, even in my own personal journey, going, okay, so this overarching theme of camaraderie through victimhood really frustrates me. Why is that? And then I pan out and I go, well, okay, it's the state of the city that I live near. It's the state of our nation. It's the state of the world. Oh, that must mean it's healing.
Yeah.
If I see it that much, right, then that must be the vibration and the frequency that is being released in mass for healing. Okay, I can work with that. I can do what I need to do. I can absolutely bring that all back home and go, what's the best way for me to transmute that? What is the best way for me to forgive that in myself? When was I a victim? Where was I a victim? When did I choose to be a victim? And I dig into those scenarios and go, okay, so if those are all the times in my life, and then I work with the superconscious and I say, okay, so on a quantum level, can you take this one example where I chose to be a victim and spiderweb that? Go find all of the connecting events in my life where I chose to be the victim. And can we please give a little bit of balm, give a little bit of love, give a little bit of forgiveness, give a little bit of tolerance to all of that, and transmute that into um, a period of empowerment instead? How can the memory be rewritten? How can the emotions, the behaviors, the thought processes, the words that were used, how can all of that be reframed into an empowered stance as opposed to a victim stance? And then all of a sudden, it's like the first domino goes down, everything else follows through. And now I'm no longer frustrated. I'm no longer angry, which means there's one less person in the world adding to, compiling exponentially to the vibration of camaraderie through victimhood. I've done my part.
Yeah.
It's possible.
And one thing I've noticed is how often I, through my journey, wanted things to be tidied up in a little bow when I was done with it.
Oh,
And then
for
it would
sure.
hit me again. And I'm like, God, I thought I was over this. But what I realized eventually is that a lot of us entrepreneurs have seen that graph where it's like, here's the entrepreneur journey, and it's this up and down and up and down, but it's overall an upward trajectory. It's just hard to see when you're in it. I would argue that it's actually more like this upward spiral, like you're
Yes.
winding up a mountain. And so
Yes.
often you end up in the spot where you see the exact same view and you feel like you're dealing with the exact same thing, but you're elevated. You're able to see it from a slightly higher perspective. And in that perspective, there's something that you're ready for that you weren't at that lower level. And so when I come back to things again and it hits me again, the judgment over one thing, the anger about that, I'm like, okay, so I cleared that last path. Now what's in it for me at this new level? There's just more for me here.
That I couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. You're more equipped. You are less judgmental of self and others, and way more open to solutions. And solutions equals healing, listener. It equals healing. And when you're able to loop back around, here's the other thing about a spiral, everybody. They're cylindrical, absolutely, but they actually get smaller and smaller and smaller. It's conical. So the faster you revisit a wound, I'm air quoting everyone, wound, like the more successful you've been. Can we like maybe cheers? So like when you come around and go, oh God, I'm nauseous. Wait a second. Because of the experiences that I have had, that nausea is actually a good thing. That's a higher perspective. That is an elevated perspective. And now you get to take that around again, not wishing a fourth on you, but you get to take it around again to maybe help someone else who says, okay, I'm really nauseous. Well, guess what? That's a good thing. It's a
Yes.
good thing. And now you get to sort of apply that to other things as well. So when somebody just has a stomach bug and they're nauseous, it's your body's way of processing and getting out of you fast. You know that there's no faster way to expel an infection from you than to vomit.
Yeah. And it fits. What are we doing there? We're again stripping the meaning or choosing it. One of the two.
Yes.
And I like to work with both. Sometimes I like to see if I can give it no meaning. It just
Mm.
is. And sometimes I need it to just be good. Why is this good? Because I need that pep talk, and I give myself the pep talk only through that lens. And sometimes I let it just be painful. But again, I try to strip the meaning of what that pain is, and I just feel it because it's the only way to actually release it from your body.
Yeah, to honor it and to honestly look at the events and experiences of your life and just honor them for what they are. Learn if you want to, definitely learn all you can. But if you are tired and you're just like, I really don't care. I just need this to be gone. Yeah, then
Yeah.
accept it for what it is and move on. What a beautiful conversation. I told you I could spend 3 days talking to you. Round the clock. Thank you so much for your time today. We didn't even get into all of the deliciousness of your experiences, your knowledge, and what you have to offer. So I hope that you'll come back. I hope that we can spend more time together. And in the meantime, where can people find you? How can they work with you to be able to make huge, impactful differences, to redefine and rewrite the story of their lives?
My website is mindlove.com. My podcast is on any of the podcast platforms. Mind Love, 2 words. And yeah, reach out to me on Instagram at mindlovemelissa if you want to talk specifically about your story. I know a lot of people are like, yeah, but it's my story. Can you do this with my story? So I'd love to just dig into yours. Maybe we'll hop on a call and see what's in it for you, because I feel like that is usually pretty helpful when they can just get it all out there.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for spending time with me.
Thank you.
I
This was so
appreciate you.
fun.
Thank you. That's a huge compliment. Thanks so much. So until next time, listener, stay tuned. Before you go, Find Your Flow is now on YouTube. Subscribe to Find Your Flow with Lisa Roche and set your notifications to catch every episode as they are released. Joining this beautiful Find Your Flow community allows your energy to be included in every healing meditation. So subscribe and follow. And if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to share it with anyone else you think would enjoy it as well.